Welcome to Warblog. This is a just a sort of a general video actually. It has a specific purpose. I was just looking at my YouTube channel and noticed that it's been sort of, other than the one I did 4 weeks ago, it's been 3 weeks since I've done a few videos. So I'm just sort of doing a video for that purpose really. But what's come to my attention, and this is what I'm sort of going to cover here, is this invasion of Dagestan scenario. So if I look at this, for example, you can see this fantastic scenario that's really exciting. However, what I've just realized is that I have actually already done this. Now I don't know what how I'm actually going to find the other one, but I found it earlier from other means. Yeah, look. So we've also got this war in Dagestan, both from the same year. So this is what I'm trying to get to in this little video. I did this scenario quite a while back now, and the thing is, I remember it being quite a fun scenario. I enjoyed doing it. But one of the things I'm sort of looking at here is essentially the sort of geography of it all. Now I have actually looked at it and figured it out, but in this scenario what we had, but basically they're the same thing, and I've even done a video on it. Like, it's the same thing, and I thought, well, maybe this is the second bit. So it says on the 4th of August 1999 these people were killed. On the 7th of August, basically these two guys and their units launched an invasion into Dagestan with a group of roughly 1,500 to 2,000 armed militants consisting of Islamic radicals from Chechnya and Dagestan. Okay, so it says they seized the districts of Tsumadi and Botliki. Well, that's not a name, is it? Now here, what we've got, this is the more recent one I've done. I've divided them up. So these are the places in Botliki. So for example, it says Godoberi, Mirsaro. So you should see Godoberi, Mirsaro, etc., etc. And these ones are to Samadhi. So obviously Echido, Gakko, Kidi, Echido, Gakko, Kidi, etc., etc. So this has the map, and obviously here is Georgia. You can't see because of the units, and this is Dagestan, and this is Russia. Now this is like a secondary border that can be used for all sorts of things, really, but it's because essentially Dagestan is a Russian republic, so the neighbouring Russian Republic of Dagestan. Now if you actually look at what Dagestan is, it's sort of like it's a satellite state under the Russian sphere of influence, but it's not actually part of Russia, so maybe a bit like Wales under the United Kingdom. But anyway, the point is, so we got this game, and I sort of thought, well, that's good, and then I sort of think, oh, hang on, now that's all this. So there's the Georgia thing. So what you've got is Echida there, Kedi, Gakko. We got these places noted, but obviously this is now Chechnya. Now that's got to be wrong, and I don't even know where Chechnya is, because this is part of Russia. So what we've got the same people, so I've named them the same. So there's the Islamic Jamaat of Dagestan, and here they are also the Islamic Tajik of Dagestan, but here the labels are IDD, Islamic Tajik of Dagestan, but here they're CPID, So that's the Congress of Peoples of Ichkeria and Dagestan. So we've got some variations on here of the exact same scenario. It has to be the same scenario. I mean, if you look here, it's quite compact. The whole invasion of Dagestan only went on for 1 month, 1 week, and 5 days. It involves actually two parts. Essentially, they invade Dagestan, but on the 4th of September, the federal forces wipe out the last bastions of resistance in the Kedar region. Basically, they re-invade. Yeah, so this is the key bit. On the morning of the September 5th, Chechen rebels launched a second invasion into the lowlands of Novolakskoye region of Dagestan. I have looked at this on the map, and it's I think a lot. Well, it's a lot further. It's a lot further south, I think. I'd have to look at that. But what I'm getting to is this. There is a second part of this, and that is on the 5th of September. Which you know, so we got from the 5th to the 14th of September. The rebels came within a mere 5 kilometers of the city of Kasat-Vayert, which came as an unpleasant surprise to Moscow. Apparently, it was to distract the forces from from attacking Karamaki. Intensive fighting continued until the 12th, when the federal forces, supported by local volunteers, forced the Islamicists back to Chechnya, etc., etc. So that's the sort of it. So the reason I'm just doing this video is just because I sort of don't want to fancy doing a video really, but I think it's something I've just spotted. So the question is, which of these scenarios I'm going to leave them both, but which of these scenarios is actually correct? And I think, to be quite honest, the answer to that probably isn't really second. I don't think I've done the second Chechnya war. Chechnya. Let's just see what Chechnya. Let's see where it is. None of these maps are really giving us an immediate indication of where Chechnya is. A map of Chechen Republic, Chechnya. Okay, so what we've got is Dagestan and Georgia. Right, so that is almost perfect, isn't it? So I'm doing my thinking with you. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about thinking, and as long as we're doing that. So Chechnya is actually this southern part of Russia. So, to be quite honest, this second map is probably more correct because they come from Chechnya than this one, because I thought they came from Georgia. So let's actually see what it says. The War of Dagestan. So Chechnya descended into chaos. Okay, so we got that. Okay, let's just go down here. Okay, on the 4th of August, several Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs servicemen were killed in a border clash with a group of fighters. It doesn't say where that border was. Okay, so on the 7th of August, which we're sort of covering, they launched an invasion into Dagestan with a group of roughly 2,000 militants from Chechnya. So it's consisting of militants from Chechnya and Dagestan. Okay, so basically it doesn't say that they came from Georgia. I mean, I probably have to sort of sit here and do some more thinking, and that's what I quite enjoy doing, but I sort of really don't want to do it on the video here. I think just raising it as an issue and is a sort of, you know, the more important thing, saying, hey, listen, it's sort of not quite right. I'm sure the information's here. I don't really even feel like reading it, to be quite honest. So, but anyway, so we've got these two scenarios. So I think that what we really need to do is to redefine this as Chechnya, and then to push all these units into Chechnya and not in Georgia. So what I've made the mistake here is thinking that they came from Georgia. So why would I have thought that? Why would I have thought that? Because in this scenario, what actually happens is they invade along here, take all these places, and they can theoretically get up to in Kilo, and then you get the Russians appearing from here. Now, what this scenario doesn't have is are the Dagestan police and the Dagestan volunteers, because a lot of these volunteers rise up in that sort of intervening period, and all we have in this one are, oh look, so we've got some Dagestan militia, so those are going to be the volunteers. We've got some Dagestan police, but clearly they're all in sort of Russian colours, which isn't, you know, that bad, but I think, you know, this one is slightly different. I just think it's interesting that these two scenarios have been put together. They're representing the same thing with completely different results based on mistakes and laziness in some regards, because in this one I'm pretty sure I could have figured out where there's some roads. There are no roads, but here it's got a lot more interesting roads. I've played this one and I enjoyed it, mainly because I played it twice, I seem to recall, and I started to take these, and it was quite difficult because, you know, by the time I wanted to come down here, the Russians were already there. So I played it the second time. Instead of taking these first, I made a beeline straight for the outliers, which isn't too difficult, because you just sort of go, you know, straight across there, or move these straight down there. You know, you've got to take these ones first. But what happens is, I think that they get some reinforcements that appear quite quickly. So if you just sort of move there and sit there to take it, by the time you get to Shodroda, or Shodroda there, you know, there are sort of, you know, Dagestan militants or forces coming to challenge that. And the thing is, they you know, it's quite difficult fighting because it's all in these these look like mountains and these look like hills. So here we've got hilly terrain and here we've got mountainous terrain. Now I'm going to leave them, because the thing is, you know, as long as we can be clear about it, and I will adjust one or the other, and I will at least get my head around it eventually at some point. But, you know, I know now that it's sort of not quite right, and I'll be able to sort of, you know, over the long term, be aware of that, figure it out. But, you know, this is actually quite an interesting game. So you end up sort of fighting here and here, at least trying to. This, I think, is the harder one to get to, but you can actually get there before any of the Russian forces. So it's up to the Russian forces then to sort of, you know, try and move things out, and you end up with sort of certain troops coming on here, and so you end up with the decision of going along this road or just cutting straight across. It's just an interesting game, and here I think, to be quite honest, there is an element of interest. I think I've been a bit lazy in not putting the roads in, but it's been interpreted in this instance as hills, hasn't it? So if I can maybe figure out some roads, so what have we got here at the very least? Nokchi Keloi there. So there's a road from Nokchi Keloi clearly through to Kiri there. So there's a road. So we can almost see where the road should be, and I haven't done it. I can add that. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to leave both scenarios in, because I'm like that. I'm like a a hoarder. You know, I don't like deleting things, even if they're sort of wrong. But I'll probably put a note in this once I've really sort of determined what's what. But again, it's sort of a really interesting situation, because I wasn't aware that I'd done this, and I do sort of just jump at things, and I wasn't really aware that I'd done it previously, and I've really completely misinterpreted it. And so you've got to think, well, you know, how many other things I've misinterpreted. But the thing is, again, I think the key thing is to sort of say, well, okay, misinterpreted, but what does it actually sort of imply and mean? You know, in sort of the grander sense, and essentially it means that, you know, what is interpretation, and you know, how can anyone be certain they're interpreting something correctly with these sort of more obscure battles? Now, it could be that there's a good book somewhere that actually specifies exactly what's what. I think the key thing for me at this point is to figure out why I thought they came from Georgia. I mean, the word Georgia is not even mentioned in here. I think the reason I thought they came from Georgia is because this is clearly Russia, and I thought Chechnya. I did actually look at Chechnya, and I was sure that Chechnya was a part of Georgia. Now, this is what it just amazes me really about it all. It is so fiddly and complex, and you know, even though I've been doing it for quite a while now, I still have no idea what's going on. Chechnya. So the war in Chechnya, the war of the Second Chechnyan War, covered Chechnya, parts of Dagestan, Ingushetia, and Georgia. So it could be that what I'm thinking here is that they came from Georgia. Where did they come from? Vladimir Putin. Okay, so they seized the villages in these two districts. The federal military response to the invasion was slow. So it did include the Russians. We've at least got that. I don't understand it. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't want to just sit here trying to understand it. I'm pretty sure if I sat down and so volunteers finally forced the Islamicists back to Chechnya. What's all I don't get about this is that if this is Chechnya and they invade these parts of Dagestan, which we've sort of almost correctly identified in this scenario, where do the Russians come from? Behind or through here? That's the question. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, got another video, which is the more important thing, but well, it's not the more important thing. It's sort of concerned at the moment just to sort of get something there, but I just wanted to sort of make it formally, you know, apparent that there's this dichotomy. Because I just sort of, you know, I do get a bit confused from time to time when I read these things. I think I haven't done that one. I mean, you know, have I done anything from the Second War of Chechnya? I don't know. Possibly the one about the First War of Chechnya. But the whole idea is to sort of, you know, truly, you know, develop and start figuring things out. The only sort of thing I will add, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but people look at my videos and then they think they're documentaries or something. They don't realise it's just me warbling at a game, because that's what you do. I mean, this is YouTube, and you create a video of your cats and your kittens, and you say it's not a documentary on cats, and this is me playing my game. And they say, I had someone recently talking about one sort of scenario, and I don't think they really grasped the idea that it was just me playing a game, and they were saying, well, this isn't very historic. You know, I can't remember what their criticism exactly was, but you know, I got the feeling that they thought I was trying to sort of actually create a sort of, you know, some kind of documentary on that particular battle, as opposed to just sort of playing it. So people looking for a clear account of the War of Dagestan probably confused at my site and my videos. So I will attempt at some point to sort of, you know, get to the bottom of it. But what better platform can you have for figuring it out than something like this? I'm more tempted to incline that these go here. That's fine. But where do the Russians come on from then? The Russians, presumably, instead of coming on from all across here, which they do, and there's a lot of, well, there aren't too many of them. I could probably change it with the with my special download facility now and just do it all in bulk, but they'll probably have to come on from here. That probably makes sense. Or maybe some of them will come on from here. But it doesn't really say where they come from. The federal military response was slow. The initial efforts were fumbling and disorganized. As the resistance to the invaders stiffened, the Russian artillery and airstrikes came into action. This gave Moscow time to assemble a counterattack under Colonel General Viktor Kazantsev, commander of the North Caucasus Military District, and then Basave and Katab, who we've already identified as up here, Basave and Katab, who launched the invasion, withdrew. See, these are the things that I quite enjoy about this whole war blog thing. We've essentially, the sum total of the information and intelligence that we've got about this is that Moscow counterattacked under the Colonel Whatsit, and Basave and Kateb withdrew. So it doesn't say where they attacked from. But it's got some other information, and that's because there is this sort of layer of suspension of disbelief with the Wikipedia articles, but when you sort of start reading them, and this is where I sort of get quite not agitated, but it's sort of something I get quite excited about, let's say. There's not enough information here. This isn't really good enough. You know, there's a lot of blurb, and it just says the Russians counterattacked and Basave and Kateb withdrew. It doesn't say what direction they did it. It doesn't say what forces they did it with. You know, we've got some of the leaders here. We've got, you know, the Russian armed forces, ground forces, air force, navy, VDV. You know, this is not an order of battle. We know that there were 17,000, so there's thousands of policemen and volunteers. You know, we've got an idea of how many people were killed. So it says that they withdrew, and on the 4th of September, as the Federal forces were wiping out the last bastions of resistance in the Kedar region, which we can assume is probably down here. I'm guessing on that, really. There's Kedi. I wonder where the Kedar region is. So, as they were wiping out the last bastions of resistance, there was a car bomb, and then on the morning, the Chechen rebels launched a second invasion into the lowlands, into lowland Novolatskoy region. Novolatskoy region of Dagestan. I don't know where it is. I'll figure it out. I'll look at it on a map or something. Of course, and use this route and come down here. Of course, it's all in Greek. It's little things like that. You see, Dagestan is part of Russia. That's a little dotted border. So basically, they attack there. So my question is, if this is Chechnya, obviously they must come from here and not from Georgia. The Russians must have come down from here through this way and down there, or maybe even landed here, or maybe their bases, maybe they even come from down here, but they would have been in Dagestan. This is Dagestan, which is like a republic. So, you know, it's all a learning experience, really. So that's where the second invasion comes from. So a box, that's how I would do it, a box like that. And you think, well, it must come from here, along from Gudermis. Do we have Gudermis? Not there. Not here, really. Okay, well, that's that. I'm going to leave it at that. You're up to speed with what I know, and what I know is that I don't know, and that's where it stands at the moment. So hopefully I will now, as a result of this, become an expert in the War of Dagestan by actually knowing what the hell I'm talking about and where they came from. But I will leave both maps in, just simply because I like to do that. This is a different scenario. It's got slightly different orders of battle. I mean, for example, one thing I did count up, I thought there were too many of these actually, because a regular company I usually set as having 200 men, which if they had up to 2,000 people would have been 10. But in this case, I've actually given them 20 for some reason. I think I just went mad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I think I sort of actually, you know, I wasn't thinking properly when I did. That's very unusual for me. But you've got all these these police that start off on the board, and then you've got these Dagestan volunteers that appear bit by bit. And so I think it's going to play out as a very different game. But I think, you know, one of the key things that I just keep reiterating, just even to myself, is that you can get two perspectives on something, and multiplying in errors, you can get a completely different thing. And then you start you know, I mean, even if you were to look at this map, you'd say, hang on, that's Russia, Georgia, and this is Chechnya, and this is obviously Dagestan, and this is Georgia, and this is Russia. And you think, oh, hang on, this one says Chechnya, and so you can get confused like that. And so it just reinforces your understanding of where the hell Chechnya actually is. Its proximity to Georgia, you know, where Dagestan actually is, and what it is, and bit by bit build up an understanding of that and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I'll stay tuned for more pointless videos. Just as a final note, I am still very heavily overworked at the moment. which is odd. Loads of things that I've got to do, which is slowing me down on everything that I'm doing, to be quite honest. But one of the big things is that, and I can only do a little bit at a time, is I'm rebuilding Warblog on a better server. I've said this in the last video, but I'll say it again just because I want to justify not doing so many videos. And I am making progress, but I have to sort of transfer everything from PHP 5 to 7, and that's actually a pretty complex process. The good news is there was one particular big problem that that I had, and it wasn't so much a problem. I mean, I'll spell it out. Basically, the way this works is I have two databases. I have multiple databases. This is a decision I made when I started it. I didn't want to put everything in the same database because basically, if you get lots of people creating games, the database that the active games are in will become full, and it will start overloading. And then combined with that, the core scenarios are in their own database. Now, if I had them in the same database, it would be quite difficult to know what was what and what was where, just like a filing system. If you had a folder on your desktop that had games, and then when you played them, you actually saved them somewhere, you wouldn't save them with the core games, you'd save them under your player games or played games or active games. And so I've done that, but the thing is, with PHP and the way computers work, coding works, you've got to copy. When someone says, I want to play this game, so when I press play this game, what it does, it copies the invasion of Dagestan, this game, into the active database. But there's all sorts of permission issues. When you're on a shared server, you can't do that. It's not that simple. I can do it actually quite simply on this because I've got a common sort of authority on it, in the sort of the sort of what users can and can't do. Whereas in the resale it was quite difficult, but that was a challenge because I didn't know whether I could replicate it because I couldn't remember what I did. I remember I did it and it's quite complex and I had to set things up, and I thought I'll never remember how to do this because I'll never do it again. And but I got past that stage, and to be quite honest, it was really difficult, but not difficult because of what I was doing. It's difficult because of some other knock-on effect on PHP 7 syntax. When you do a query, you have to actually specify the connection every time, whereas in PHP 5 you don't. So I was activating a query to copy the database over with just one parameter, and it wasn't working. All I had to do was put in the other parameter. It was all pretty simple, actually, in retrospect. But I've crossed that. Everything else is not going to be a problem. That was the only thing I thought, what happens if I can't do that? And so what's left to do is I can just about get to adding the game. So I can press that now, and it will actually create the new database, create the new game in the new database. More to the point, it doesn't create any databases, it just copies the table over. Point being, if you get like lots and lots of people playing games and the database becomes full and crashes and becomes corrupt or something, it's not going to harm the core games, which are separate and isolated into their own database. But so I've got that, so you can print, you can do that. The print and play doesn't work at the moment, but the next thing to do, I think, is the game mechanism. So I've got to do all that. I've got to also do the behind the scenes things where I make stuff, and that is going to be really complicated. I've got to do the payment mechanism. So it's a lot of work, to be quite honest. It's a massive amount of work, and it's just a case of going through the code and just changing certain things, but step by step, checking whether it works. And it really is a step-by-step process. It's quite bizarre, really. So that's that. And so what I'm hoping for is I get through my workload at the moment and I complete this migration, and I'll be able to get back onto the normal thing of just using it. I don't even know why I'm migrating it at the moment, because it's not as though there's a lot of users using it. It's just I want to set it up for sort of heavier use. It has to be done at some point, and the current host is just actually the 5th largest host in the UK, as they claim to be. It's just been so irregular in its service that I've been almost being forced to move away from them. And this is something that is a big challenge. The irony of it is that I've identified another host, and with one click of a button I can migrate this whole thing onto this other host that is a lot bigger and better. In theory, I don't really know how they're going to perform, because I've not been with them at all before. This is all new, so they might be better. I might be happy with their service. They're just hosts, so I don't know. But they can do the whole thing, so I could actually migrate it away from that less reliable service to another unknown service, but potentially, promisingly, more reliable. But this is, if I've not said it before, it's on the Amazon cloud. So it's interesting times, really, because Amazon, I don't really like using Amazon. I don't like these big corporates centralizing everything. But on the other hand, it seems to be, well, hang on, I don't think Amazon are ever going to go down. Not in the sort of sense that a hosting company can go down. A hosting company can get bought out. I mean, this is going to be, I think, as robust as it gets. I'm not going to get sort of, I mean, it's obviously not a shared server, but I'm pretty sure that whatever I've got will be probably moving around across their sort of their cloud environment, and upgraded as required, in the sense that it's all on a sort of virtual platform. It just seems to me that it's going to be, it's like a no-brainer. It's like a different world. It feels like a different world to just using a sort of a regular hosting provider, who I think are probably seeing, are going to feel the sort of crux of it as people like AWS, truly start to eat away. I've got, I've done stuff with DigitalOcean before, and they're offering really cheap services, but a lot of the problems with things like people like that is the support and the amount of documentation on how to do things. AWS Lightsail I'm using, I've used the EC3, EC2 and things like that. They actually have Amazon running full, complete and thought through tutorials on how to do things, and it makes the world of difference, when you're putting like a lamp stack together. But in Lightsail, you just press the button and there it is. You've got to do things, and so, for example, one of the things that's really convinced me that is the way to go. I've been using VPSs for a while now, but I'm never really using virtual min, and which allows for multiple sites to be hosted. But on that and other lamp stacks that I've done, the PHP folder has always been outside of the sort of root. So you'd go to warblog.games/php my admin, which would get you into a database administrator. With this Lightsail lamp stack, you don't get that. It's all well and truly hidden below the home files. Further, you can't get into it. You cannot get into it without a public and private key to create a tunnel. So you've got to go into a terminal. It's really quite strange, because it's at the forefront of what I'm capable of doing. But I've done it, and because it's Amazon and they've documented it fully, it was just really easy. Where something like this with DigitalOcean or Cloud VPS or any of these other sort of fairly leading edge cloud sort of hosting providers, they tend not to have documentation. You tend to sort of Google it, go to sort of their forums or their half mangled posts and half answered things, tutorials that are well out of date. Whereas, and that, they offer servers exactly the same thing, but they just don't offer the guidance on doing it, and that's been a stumbling block. But whenever I put a lamp stack together, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, I've always ended up with the PHP MySQL phpMyAdmin being outside of the folder, as I sort of mentioned, and in this one it's not, and you have to tunnel into it, which means you have to, you actually have to open up a terminal. You have to log in with your credentials, and you have to then say create a tunnel. It's not complex, but it's very sort of obtuse, and that means basically that it's secure. I mean, it's really secure. Because you can't get there publicly in any way. You have to literally create an IP tunnel to it, and as soon as your terminal comes to an end, you suddenly find you can't get access to it again. There's a bit of faffing around, but it's exactly where I want it to be, because I've been using these things for a while with lesser important services and sites, but I just feel that with this, because it's so database centric, I really need that level, and I've seen that level with other companies before. When you notice that you're using 888 as a sort of a route through to it, and so they do that to some extent. But this, I'm not even using the IP, I'm using the local IP, and it maps that through. So yeah, it's interesting. And so when I do that, I can only upgrade, I can't downgrade, which is not so much of a problem, but it means I'm less likely to do it. At the moment it's only on 500 megabytes RAM, just because there's no point in going much higher, but it still seems fast for that. But what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to basically scale up, and I can do this on most things, with DigitalOcean and etc. and other VPS providers, but I'll be able to upgrade almost infinitely to support any load, and it'd be interesting to see how much of a load Warblog actually puts, because one of the things that and it's odd I'm talking about this all now because I've finished this scenario, but talking about the scenario, but one of the things that's sort of a bit odd is my code is my code is good, because as long as it works I'm happy, but behind the scenes there are certain things I think thinking, is this actually efficient? Are these efficient coding loops? Now, I'm quite good at it in a small sense, but I'm also aware that I just don't know how much of a load this really puts onto anything. Now, I've done certain things to sort of cache the map, so that you're not rebuilding it. When you play it, you rebuild it, but this map, I mean, if you look at it here, that's odd. Where is it? It's going to be up. Where's the map? That's really odd. That is odd. I think I know what's up here. That is really bizarre. Because what I think you'll find is that this is the map. So what I probably have to do, if I scroll this way, there's the map. It's now all on one line. That is crazy. Look how long that is. That's because it's actually been cached and then stuck into a database, and when it's pulled out of the database, all the blank spaces are removed, putting it into a much smaller space, which speeds things up. So instead of processing every time you load the map, it just loads up some blank HTML, which is fine. When you play it, it's doing it the old way, rebuilding the map every time you do a screen refresh, but you sort of have to do that because of the way the game works, but that's going to be less onerous. I mean, for example, if you were to go through and look at every game, you would load the game up every time, and every time you even refresh the page, you'd load it up, and that would have taken up quite a lot of time, processing time. And I think on the reseller might have been causing a bit of a problem, but I've never really thought of it as really much of a problem. If I press F5, this is quite slow, but it's it's not massively slow, and that was slower than quite often it will just blink of an eye and it's done. So it's not really a big thing, but what I'm saying is I'm not entirely sure what sort of load my code is going to put, and so it'll be interesting to see because I've got gauges and things on the VPS to sort of see, how much memory it's taking. And at the moment, the load is minimal. It's hardly, you know, above zero on just about everything, even when I'm using it. But it'd be interesting to sort of see whether or not, if I do get a spike in users, and I do from time to time when people sort of point from forums and things like that, what sort of loads are required. But the bottom line is, we have to react to whatever those loads are to provide some sort of, uptime, so to speak. So I'm sort of quite interested. I'm quite excited about the development, but at the same time, I don't think that it's going to suddenly result in a large rush. But once it's done, it's done, and that'll be a sort of weight off my mind, really. But until it's done, I'm not really going to be back into sort of, I'll just create another scenario, because if that sort of mood of, I'll just create another scenario is now being transferred into, I won't do that, I'm going to do some more of this migration, converting a few more of these pages. It's probably 100 pages to convert, so it's not a small job. But at the moment, I'm sort of doing things in a sort of scheme of priority. And to be quite honest, I could set the site live right now, but there's two problems with that. Firstly, people wouldn't be able to play it right now, but no one's playing it anyway. So what I'm saying is, you could see it as an external person. It's all set up. You would look exactly like this. Go to the home page, all the games are there. This one's not there because I haven't exported it yet. It's being built on the old one, but basically everything's there. All this text is here. It's all like that. You can see the C game. You go through, you see it. It builds the map. It does everything. So unless you actually sign up and start to play it, it wouldn't make any difference. So I could do that right now. I am sort of tempted to do that, but what I don't want to do is to actually sort of, because I'm logged in, I can't see the sign up button. I don't want anyone signing out. It's sod's law, sod's law that if I did that, someone would try and sign up and say, it doesn't work, or someone would say, I want to sign up, and then it's not playable, because the games are not playable at the moment. But that's only a few steps away. So that's where we stand on all of that, really. Anyway, I hope that sort of gives you your war gaming, what's it called when you have to have a shot of something every day, hit, your hex encounter hit for the day. I know that, more so from a developer point of view, but fresh content is, to some extent, is a big driver for me. Not because I think, this is exciting or brilliant content. It's just, I think there are people that are just hungry for anything. I know I am, in a certain degree. I go across the internet and there's just nothing to read. I think, how can you be exposed to the entire internet and say, there's nothing on? It's like TV, there's nothing on. The entire internet, there's nothing on. And, my interests have become so sort of narrowed down to certain things. But I also think there's a massive restriction on actually quality content. Most of the content's, I look exclusively for anything that even strikes me as being homemade or small scale. But it's a task just to get beyond looking at the main news sites. Whatever you search for, it's got Wikipedia first, Amazon first, the news sites first, all the big players. There's just not much of it out there. But so I go to places, and I sort of, not because I really want to see what's there, and not because I even care what's there. For example, I do go to the Reddit page fairly regularly, and they have videos on what other war games are happening. And I really don't care what's on there, but I just want to see something new. And I thought, that's new, that's rubbish. Oh well, but that sort of gives me that hit that I need of some sort of varied, fresh content. And that's why, and the reason I'm doing this, because people might be going to my blog, they might look at it for 5 seconds and say, look, there's a new video. They'll look at it for 10 seconds and that's job done. They're not going to look at it for 49 minutes 27 seconds or so at this stage. Probably not. I know that, but the thing is, I don't care. It's more the point that there's a new video up there, and then they look at it and then they go away. And if they look at it and see, well, this guy hasn't done you know, in the last month he's done 4 videos, they might think, well, you know, they might sort of think that I'm stopping, or you know, they'll be less inclined. I mean, ideally I'd do a new video every day, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to just churn them out. Ideally I'd do a new game every day, but again, I don't, you know, I've got to fit it in with what I do, and I don't want to be just churning them out. But at the same time, I am, you know, at that level of just churning something out, because people just want to look at something, and the quality is sort of, it's not sort of like 10 marketing techniques, you know, how to get people to look at your channel. I know I'm warbling now, but I just want to add this, just as a really sort of secondary point. I had a reason to go onto Twitter. I don't use Twitter. I don't use any social media really or anything. And on my Twitter account, I mean, I'll actually, I wonder what will happen if I look at it. Oh, it didn't happen. Go away. Why can't the backspace? I can't go back now. Okay, I'll do this again. Opening up another window. Right. The point I'm trying to get to here. Oh, I know why. I have problems with not generally. I've got 3 screens in front of me. I think I'm on my other computer, but I'm not. I'm on this different computer, because this is the computer that has a microphone that works. So I'm not actually on my computer that has my account logged in. So I can't show you what I wanted to show you. But what I wanted to show you was that I only have 19 followers. Now the thing is, about 2 days ago I had 14 followers, and what happened was there were some issues regarding something, and I went to this thing and there's all these people tweeting, and I started tweeting. Now what I was hoping to show you, I'll look at it on my other one. If I can actually find a spare tab. What I was hoping to show you was that ordinarily per day, I mean at the moment, yeah, so on November, well, put it this way, the 1st of November I had 284 impressions for Twitter. On the 2nd of November I had 460, 438, 444. That's sort of like, that actually strikes me as being quite a lot. But I went onto this thing where this sort of thing was happening, and I started to post a few things on Twitter. I deleted them all now because I don't like leaving a footprint. And I was using this account, and you know, because something was happening and everyone was talking about it, and it was interesting really, because you see all these people with their little faces on their Twitter things, and you know, and people respond to you. And the point I'm trying to get to is, on that day I had 9,953 impressions, and I got 5 followers, or 9, or if I was at 15, 4 followers. It's quite significant considering it's taken me, what's it, nearly 2 years to get 14 followers. You know, and what that made me realise is that I could sit here, you know, if I was an attention person looking for attention seeker, so to speak, I'd probably sit here sort of tweeting. And I've seen people, they tweet and they reply, and they're basically playing the social media game of just getting out there. And then, you know, but if I was to do that, if I was to find something similar to what I was doing before and just start posting on it, you know, suddenly I get all these followers, and you know, instead of having 300 impressions, I get 10,000 impressions. I could really start sort of, you know, trying to sort of push Warblog as a sort of tweet and a site and all sorts. I also, you know, it also resulted in, you know, another YouTube follower. But the point is, I don't do that. But you know, but at the same time, I'm aware that, you know, getting out there and creating a video like this, although this has gone on insanely long now, it is sort of part and parcel of the game, you know. So I am sort of doing that, but what I'm saying is, if I actually wanted to be, you know, go to the sort of level stupid on it all, I could be just sitting there tweeting on just about everything. You know, I could be tweeting about the US election now, and you know, just doing it simply to get impressions and followers, and doing. I don't do that. You know, it's just here. So hopefully that will give you a bit of a perspective on how I view these things. You know, I'm not just pushing this content out because I want to sort of just suddenly desperately get some more views, because if I wanted to, I could just sit there posting inane things on inane sites. I mean, I am playing the game, so to speak. You know, you can see that I got all these sites, and I'm doing that specifically because this is social media. This is what it does. You're supposed to sort of get these sites up and running. For example, there's Gab, which is down. You know, I've got my Gab site. I've also opened up this one. That's a bit controversial, so I'm pointing it out. But I've got this one, which is there, which is, I know it's a video site. This is a word blog. This is Medium. You know, I'm on Medium. But no one looks at any of this stuff. You know, War Games, I've got one follower, and that's probably me. You're not allowed to clap your own things, but you know, I can see I've been sort of putting these things in here. Obviously, 1 minute reads are not particularly exciting, but you know, I've got all the channels. What's this? Tumblr, Steemit. No, that's Tumblr. Or is this Tumblr? Yeah, this is Steemit. It's sort of the wrong thing. Twitch, BitChute, you know, Flickr, Pinterest. You know, I'm doing it all at that level. But I don't care, you know, too much. It's just sort of, you know, if you follow the instructions on the of life, it says create some social media accounts and get people seeing what you do. And you know, these look amazing to me, but no one ever sort of, it doesn't actually do anything. It's not as though people look at these and say, oh god, I saw that and I came to your site and signed up, you know. But I just like this, actually. I like this sort of, you know, it's just interesting. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because it's 57 minutes. It's just a stupid amount of time to have been doing that. But I will be doing things more as soon as this server's all sorted out. And, you know, if you're listening to this, you know, things are moving forward at a, you know, a really good rate. It's just getting through it. Okay, I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.